I think we're live, and we are live. My goodness, it's good to be back. Welcome, Cam Bagrie.
Evening, Chief.
How are you, sir?
Oh, not too bad, actually. Apart from probably had a better week than what you had in regard to the Chiefs.
Oh, God, man, I was so gutted. I really was.
Well, I'm a Highlanders boy, so last week was pretty good. This week's news feed was not that great in regard to what some of the lads have been up to.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, my sister worked with the Highlands, and it sounds like an amazing organisation. It really does. She just absolutely loves it. But yeah, God, isn't it an amazing competition? Because there's nothing in it between those teams, is there really? I mean, like, okay, the Chiefs haven't had a win, but you wouldn't necessarily say, oh, they've played really shit all season. There's been nothing in it.
Oh, but it's been high-intensity rugby. Well, you switch over and you have a look at the Australian games afterwards, and they're just like chalk and cheese in regard to what's actually going on in the field. It just sort of illustrates the gaps. But, yeah, there's nothing like those Kiwi teams getting stuck into each other. And I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to that North versus South game. Yeah, I can remember going to those things when I was a teenager.
Yeah. Do you remember those? Wasn't it great when you were a kid when the international teams would come over and they'd actually have a game against like South Canterbury? I remember the Pumas coming over and playing South Canterbury, and remember Hugo Porter, the
first fly up.
Yeah, amazing with the drop kicks.
Yeah, but they'd come out for sort of 4 weeks.
What's that?
No, those teams would typically come out for sort of 4 weeks, play 2 to 3 test matches, and they play midweek games as well.
The old dirt tracker.
Living the dream. A little bit tougher now given the schedule.
Yeah. Oh, you sort of sit down and watch that competition. You go, actually, do you even need the Aussie teams in there? Someone else was saying this to me tonight. It's like, I don't watch the Aussie competition. That's freaking boring. But no,
I think it comes down. It comes down to money, Sean, and you're going to need more global presence than just the New Zealand competition. What's the space? They've got to be more global, because otherwise the brutal honesty is we're just going to get picked off in regard to these top players who'll just end up off to Japan, Europe, France, the UK.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for tuning in, people, and I'm sure some of you will be tuning in later. Before we get down to business, just to sort of recap, I'm going to talk to Cam every Sunday now at 7 o'clock, so hopefully that time works for you. If you can't catch it live, then obviously just watch the replay later on, and we're on podcasts, we're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube. You can find us anywhere, just the Essential Talent Podcast, it's called. And also, of course, I speak to him because he's on our books at Essential Talent. We're doing a hell of a lot of good work at the moment. In fact, he did a gig for a friend of mine, John Calder at Tompkins. It's Tompkins Wake, isn't it? That's right. In Hamilton. And they friggin' loved him. So how we work with Cam is that you pay a set fee like you do with any other speaker. But the difference with Cam is that he goes in there for sort of like half a day, maybe just over half a day, and you own him for that time period. So he'll do all the research on your particular industry, and really get into the nuts and bolts of it to help you plan for the next 12 months. But then you can bring your customers in and have a session. You can have maybe another 4 or 5 clients come in later on, and it's all just for the set fee. And so it's really good, and I really encourage you to book them through Essential Talent. Just get hold of us at essentialtalent.co.nz, and we'll organise that for you. It'll be great. So anyway, we're here, 7 o'clock every Sunday. Got some questions for you, my friend. So have we dodged a bullet, or is this the calm before the storm?
Well, glass half full is the bungee cord's been attached. When you couldn't spend over April and May, and then you head out of lockdown, well, what are you going to want to do? You're going to want to go spend a bit of money. And you can't travel overseas, so no one's been holiday. So all of a sudden people have realised they've got a little bit of money in the checkbook. So the likes of Spa, sales have actually been going through the roof. You know, those people that were thinking about going on their OE, they're not going on their OE. What are they looking at doing? Well, they're probably going to stuck in New Zealand, so they're looking at, you know, maybe jumping into the property ladder and buying that first house. Yeah, so we're seeing a little bit of it's probably a dead cat bounce. You know, I think there's still some challenges on the other side. Yeah, the brutal reality is that New Zealand is globally connected. You know, what happens internationally matters for us. And the United States and a whole lot of countries around the globe are just not controlling this thing. Yeah, closer to home, Australia, this thing's whipping around Melbourne, Victoria. The risk is it starts to escalate, increase around New South Wales as well. So, look, we've seen that bounce, yeah, but I'll be pretty wary about what things are going to be like the second half of 2020 and 2021. Well, there's been reports out in the last day or so in the media in regard to the pipeline for construction work looking a little bit light next year. Yeah, people at the moment they had good pipelines because things look helplessly good in January, February, March this year. Well, the pipeline for next year is going to be determined by what happens in the next sort of 2 to 3 months. And we're just starting to see a little bit more cautiousness that's coming through. Yeah, why? Well, New Zealand's still in a pretty good space, but we just need to be realistic in regard to what's going on globally and even locally across a lot of sectors. Yeah, tourism in particular. Yeah, tourism hasn't seen the hit yet. Yeah, tourism is going to see the hit in October, November, December, January, February, March next year. Why? Because that's when we see a big influx of foreigners.
Mm. You mentioned Aussie before. Do you think, should we be concerned? Should we be concerned about Australia and where that's at the moment?
Well, Australia is one of our biggest trading partners. They sort of tango with Australia, but there's a whole lot of other channels that we need to think about as well. Yeah, trans-Tasman migration flows. We might actually see a whole rush of New Zealanders that actually want to come home because the unemployment rate in Australia is moving up faster than ours. Normally at this juncture, you'd see the New Zealand dollar, Aussie dollar falling. It'd normally be in the low 80s. This time around, it's up in excess of 90. Why is that? Well, Australia just look a little bit weaker than us. We're seeing the trade numbers, export figures into Australia in the first sort of 6 months of the year. They're looking, 5 months of the year. We haven't got the 6 month year. They're looking about 10% below where they were in 2019. So we're starting to see the early stages of this. The one that bugs me, and I'm thinking about, what happens if the Australian unemployment rate keeps on moving up, and that hits the Australian property market, and what's going to be the reaction of the Australian banks? Now, the reality is that the New Zealand banking system is Australasian. We are connected with what goes in across the Tasman. And despite New Zealand, I think, being in a very clearly stronger position, I'd start to wonder about whether we're going to see some directives come out of head office that are an Australasian response as opposed to a separate New Zealand and Australian response.
So can you give me some examples of what that would mean for us back here in New Zealand, potentially?
Oh, tighter credit. You know what goes on, and we're seeing it in New Zealand at the moment. So the Reserve Bank put out a survey, I think it was sometime in the last week or so, which looked at credit conditions. And what they noted was in the first half of 2020, demand for credit was pretty soft. Why? Well, we were locked down. There's no point demanding credit when you couldn't actually get out there and buy a house, that sort of stuff. We started to see that change over June. But what we're seeing within that survey is that the second half of 2020 and 2021, banks are flagging tightening in the supply of credit. Now, for some sectors such as commercial, dairying, it's just sort of accentuated to pre-COVID thematics. It was already tightening up because those sectors are a little bit more risky. But if you're looking, getting a mortgage, the glass half full version is that, interest rates are incredibly low, so debt servicing metrics look an awful lot better. But banks are going to be asking a lot more questions. What are those questions going to be about? the reliability of your income. Do you have a job? What's it going to look like 12, 24 months down the track? So banks are flagging that they're going to be asking a few more of those questions. So it's not just about demand for credit in the back half of this year. It's going to be about supply, availability. And at the moment, New Zealand's in a far better place than Australia. I wouldn't want to see some global or Australian directive come out and start seeing things even more tighter in New Zealand, when strictly speaking, we're looking a bit better than what they're seeing in Australia.
How about the housing market in New Zealand? Because and I've got a lot of good mates in the real estate industry that own various things, various businesses, and great people too. One thing I noticed about people in that industry, they're always good. They're always good at talking their industry up, and good on them. They always say, "Oh no, it's going good." But the word that I'm getting is that it is house prices are doing really well, and it's good out there. So, what's your pick on the next 6-12 months? Because interest rates are going to be low. Obviously, they're going to remain low, aren't they? Good time to buy.
One size doesn't fit all, right, in regard to where the property market goes. People tend to think that the property market, we all sort of row in the same boat. That's actually incorrect. So if you ever look at any time, the monthly data, even if the property market is really weak, there's still typically 30% of territorial authorities where house prices are moving up. And that's at a pretty extreme weak part of the cycle, such as the global financial crisis. So you might have 70% of areas around New Zealand that are going down, but 30% can still be going up within a really weak market. So we've got to be really careful in regard to how we categorise this. Look, we know there's some parts of New Zealand at the moment, if you look at what's going on in Queenstown. Queenstown, the market's down. Depending on which stats you look at out of REINZ, the market's down 5 to 10% in the last 3 months. We're starting to see a little bit of weakness across Otago and Southland as well. Conversely, we've seen a little bit of a bounce across other parts of New Zealand. And we're seeing this real two-tiered sort of attitude. On some levels, if you look at debt servicing metrics across New Zealand, your household debt service, which is like your interest payments as a share of disposable income, it's about half what it was in 2007, 2008, which is the last time the New Zealand property market really struggled. Now, that's a benefit of incredibly low interest rates. So debt serviceability at the moment is not a problem, subject to one caveat, whether you got a job. And this is the flip side of the equation in regard to what's actually going on there across the labour market. What are we still seeing at the moment? Your job seeker plus the new special benefit the government has moved in, but those numbers are still moving up. They're about 2,500 people increases on those benefits in the last week. So unfortunately, when you see unemployment still rising, you still got some risks to consider on the property market and where it could be going. And of course, there's all these other effects that are going on as well. You've got people from overseas. There's some high-end people in Hong Kong, London. They're just saying, they're calling up, just give me a home. I'm going to be home in 12 to 24 months. I don't care what it is, but just send me a picture. I'll visually inspect it, but just get me something. So you're seeing some real quirky stuff in the market. People that can't travel overseas at the moment, can't travel. What are they doing? Well, I might as well put that money towards a deposit on a house. So if you're a first home buyer. The thing to keep an eye on the next sort of couple of weeks, I suspect we could see something pretty big out of a political party. So watch this space.
Say that again.
I think we could see something out of a political party. What that is, I'm not too sure at the moment, but it's one of those sensitive issues in regard to housing. And if you want to really sort of stimulate their economy, the housing market's a real obvious one to do it. We saw registered master builders were out there, was it yesterday or the day before, their CEO, you're talking about some sort of Australian style package initiative. I'm hearing one political party might be taking up the reins on that as well. So what's the space in regard to whether we get something proactive to try to stimulate the property market in 2021?
Okay, yeah. Before we go on to the next question, and you don't need to necessarily comment on this, but I'm going to throw, because you're not a political analyst, you're an economist. But I've got to say, I found that whole Tova's commentary of this News Hub poll quite fascinating, because clearly Labor has never been more popular. 60%. Compared to, I think National was around about 25%. So there's no argument about that. And, Jacinda Ardern has done an incredible job. She's a great communicator. But what I found fascinating about it was Tova's analysis on some of those numbers and her commentary, because she was kind of saying, Judith has been unable to turn this around. And yet when you actually look at Judith's figures, I thought they were pretty good. I mean, when you go, and this was the thing that really got me, is when she said Judith Collins had a slight bump from 4% to 14.5%. That's not a slight bump. And what has actually happened over the last 12, 18 months? You've had Bridges at around about that 4% for preferred Prime Minister. Common 4 to 14.5%. It didn't make sense to me. But I just thought the commentary was a little bit off. Clearly, Labor are killing it and owning it, and many would say with very good reason. But I found that commentary a little weird in places. But anyway, so where do you see things on the jobs front? What's your kind of prediction there?
Well, I think we've got a pretty long road ahead.
Yeah.
So if I look at the data we're seeing at the moment, glass are full. Indicators such as job ads out of seat, they've actually bounced quite sharply. But if I have a look at where they are at the moment, they're about 50% of where they were in 2019. Now, some sectors are better than others. So if I have a look at farming, for instance, the job ads are basically rocketed right back to where they were in 2019. Essential service, you can't get some of these agricultural contractors sort of coming in. So lo and behold, you're out there advertising for Kiwis to come down and jump on the tractor. But if I look at some other professions, if you look at accounting, legal, fraternity, construction, construction's about 60% of what it was last year. And, supposedly the construction sector's, apparently going to sort of lead a little bit of the revival on the other side. I'm seeing a big increase in the average number of applicants per job as well. So things are just, things have turned. Now, the big issue here is how long is the labour market going to remain soft? And I think firms are going to be in a bit of a holding pattern for a while until we get some economic clarity. Now, the problem we've got at the moment is that the biggest certainty out there is uncertainty. And it's not just locally. Look, locally, I think if we can look at the glass being half full in regard to what we've done, we've got ourselves into a really good space. But realistically, we need to be mindful of what's going on around the globe. So there's a lot more talk at the moment about what's called a W-shaped cycle. We've had the bounce, we've had the springboard effect, the bungee cord.
What's the K-shaped? What does the K-shaped thing mean that I heard about?
The K, economists have these sort of letters of the alphabet to describe economic cycles, and the K is a little bit of a convoluted one, but the K sort of epitomizes that you're going to get sectors that could be going in differing directions. So if we have a look at the moment in regard to, look, what have we seen? We've seen the likes of technology has absolutely taken off. You have a look at the NASDAQ, have a look at the so-called FANGs in regard to what's been going on globally. Now, they're facing a little bit of a testing point at the moment because the earnings are starting to come under a bit of a spotlight. But COVID's just been an absolute lightning bolt in regard to turbocharging people's appetite for the technology. And that's actually been a good thing. Some sectors have bounced back pretty sharply after we're into sort of COVID lockdown, or exiting COVID lockdown. Other sectors, international tourism, you're on the down leg of the K, right? Where's the rebound? there is no rebound. Now, you're trying to pinch share out of domestic tourism, but the international market's going to take a long time to come back. Personally, I think retail, particularly commercial property in regard to retail, they're going to face a pretty tough 1 to 2 sort of years. But the case sort of epitomises is that, once again, similar to the housing market, just be careful that saying one size fits all, because one size does not fit all. You can quite often, whether you're going up or going down as an economy, you can have these parts of the economy going in fundamentally different directions.
Okay. How about the New Zealand dollar? So where's that? Is that sort of 65 to 68 cents? No, where against the US?
She's about been up around 66. If we sort of go back a
so
few
what's
months
driving
ago,
that?
she was down in the high 50s, low 60s. Now some of it's sort of driven by economic fundamentals. So commodity prices have actually been pretty buoyant, particularly dairy prices have bounced back up, which has been really encouraging. We're seeing people have come out there and revised their estimate for next year's dairy payout. Some more money into the dairy sector is a good thing. To be fair, I don't think they're going to be spending that money because they're going to be using it to repay down debt at the banks. But it's still, the money's actually there. Some of the improvement in the New Zealand dollar has also been just about risk appetites. Equities have performed pretty well. That means risk on. So currencies such as New Zealand dollar have been dragged up. The third thing is the weakness in the US dollar. And that's something which we need to keep a bit of an eye on. Because the US dollar, it's still the reserve currency around the globe. But the United States is facing some pretty big problems, even beyond COVID. America's got what's called net external liabilities or debt, which is about $12 trillion. They've also got government debt, which is around 100% of GDP. And at the moment, they're putting a lot of stuff on tick. Now, global investors are still being enticed to America. Why? Because it's the world's biggest economy. It's got, it's the reserve currency. But sometimes you just need to sit back and you think about America's got a fundamental problem. They don't save enough money. They're pretty good spenders, but they don't save. Now, at some stage, I think people are going to start to demand a little bit more of an additional risk premium to invest in America.
We're not great savers either.
Arguably, we're starting to see a little bit of that now because the US dollar's under a little bit of pressure. But look, what's the next sort of week or two? Because equities have just started to teeter a little bit as well. People are starting to get a little bit more nervous after this rally. So the New Zealand dollar, first and foremost, will be driven, I think, by risk appetites, i.e. equities up or equities down.
What's the lowest that you can ever remember the New Zealand dollar being against the US? Wasn't it sort of, at one stage, many years ago, wasn't it sort of like 38, 39?
39?
Yeah. Well, do you think?
Well, no, that was way back in the era where there was one game in town, and it was called the pot of gold at the end of the NASDAQ rainbow. It was all about everything technology-wise. So if you were old school, which is what New Zealand was in regard to dairying, farming, commodity-based sort of stuff, well, you're at the bottom of the pot. But the American dollar was king. So everybody was getting absolutely thrashed, including the Australian dollar. The Australian dollar was sub 50 cents against the greenback. And I can remember, way back, it was when it went through sort of 50 cents. We thought, this is pretty good. And of course, the exporters are lighting up at 50 cents, thinking this is glorious. It went to 40. Well, then it went back to 85. So.
Where's the bloody plane? Is that outside my place or outside yours?
Not outside mine, I don't think.
It's outside mine. There we go. We've got a couple of questions here. God, we're getting questions. Imagine if we do this we are going to do this every Sunday at 7 o'clock. We'll start getting questions. You watch. Terry Wilson, he's owns a couple of Mitre 10 Megas, very, very good friend of mine. He has said it's the calm, but how severe will the storm be? And actually, this also goes into a message from Catherine Ryder, who says, compared to the GFC, how do you think we're tracking? So people just want to get some kind of comparison, I suppose. By the way, if you've got any other questions, stick them in the comments because we're going to wrap it up soon. What do you think, mate? What do you make of that?
I don't think you can compare this to the GFC. Yeah, they're fundamentally different shocks. Yeah, the GFC first and foremost was a demand shock. You know, the financial system got a bit ahead of itself, but very aggressive action on the other side, lower interest rates, quantitative easing. We reflated the economy. We sort of come back out the other side in reasonably quick order. Was it a V-shaped outcome? No, but it was still a U. You know, what we need to think about in regard to COVID and what's going on at the moment is that it's not just about demand, it's about supply. You know, big parts of the global economy are still shut down. You know, we're seeing restricted movements. There is a form of restriction, but there's also a form of self-restriction. Do people really want to go out and do things? You know, I think we're going to start to see some pretty big behavioural challenges on the other side. But going back to you, I think the question's from you from Mitre 10. But the Mitre 10, I suspect, will be seeing some quirky things. All right, so if I look at the outlook for the next sort of 1 to 2 years, I think, I'd be pretty conservative from a risk management perspective in regard to what I'd be thinking the sales line is going to be. But if I have a look at people are not travelling overseas at the moment. So all of a sudden you find you've got an awful lot of money in the checkbook that we're going to blow on Europe. So all of a sudden renovating the bathroom, renovating the kitchen, or buying some new curtains, that sort of stuff, goes to the top of the pile. So the money's actually getting redistributed, recycled in other parts of the economy because we can't travel overseas. So we're seeing these quirky sort of dynamics. And the challenge for businesses is to not just think about the market in the aggregate, is start to think about what they can do to sort of siphon off that money in their direction, as opposed to let it go somewhere else.
Yeah. Okay, any questions, people? Because I'm going to wrap things up. Anything else you want to close with before we wrap it up for tonight?
No, I think the next couple of weeks are going to be really interesting, actually. This week, globally, we'll be watching what's going on in Australia, particularly in regard to COVID, the United States. A couple of big tech firms have got their earnings numbers out this week as well. And we know that it's been a pretty Amazon and I can't remember who's the other one. And Apple are coming out this week. Yeah, so that'll be a real big barometer in regard to what's been going with tech. The Republicans in America, there's talk about the next stage of a stimulus package, and America probably needs it because parts of America have been sort of locked down. Yeah, I don't think people in New Zealand quite realise how lucky we are, but you've got to sort of ask people the obvious question: how would you feel if we went back to alert level 2 or 3? And I guarantee we wouldn't be that happy. Well, that's happening in other parts of the globe.
Yeah.
We're starting to see, there was a story out today that it looks like this thing's come back into, I think, Vietnam or Spain. Yeah, they thought they were clear.
Spain's really bad. Yeah. Yeah, big problems there. That Amazon is interesting. I had a look the other day. I think their share price is something like, I know this sounds weird, you might know this. I think their share price is like $3,000. Does that sound right? It's huge.
And they're characterised as both a growth and a value stock, which I sort of thought you're either one or the other. But people have been, if you look at the old traditional Dow stocks, this sort of stuff in regard to your Main Street stocks, your Main Street sort of stuff is still struggling. It's pretty tough out there in regard to retailing, restaurants, this sort of stuff. But tech has been a big fundamental driver of the rally we've seen around the globe. The past few nights, we've actually just seen tech has started to come under a little bit of spotlight as people start to question what are things going to be like in the next sort of 6 to 12 months. Can you continue to deliver the goods, so to speak?
Awesome, Cam. Mr. Bagrie and I are working on a few different things that we'll let you know about in the next wee while. So if you've just joined in, watch the replay. Here's the thing with Cam. What we can do is we can bring him into your business, and what he does a hell of a lot of research on your particular industry, right? So in your region. So he can say, hey, look, this is what's happening. This is what's likely to happen. You get him along for sort of half a day, maybe a little bit longer than that. He talks to your guys, but then you get, look at the dog wandering off in the background. Bloody hell. Then you get your then you get your customers in and you have a chat to them, and then you might get another special little group in and you have them for that whole period. So how you use them is your business, and he's actually quite reasonable as far as price goes as well. So he's a realist, as you probably have mentioned, as you probably realised just in his commentary. I mean, there is no point. Someone said to me the other day, they said, "Oh, it'd be good if you could be a little bit more positive." I think this is positive. We're both positive people, but this is also about being bloody realistic. You can't just sort of walk around with your head in the clouds. You've got to have an understanding of what's around the corner. Otherwise, how are you going to be able to run your business properly? So we'll be back same time next week. We're going to do this every Sunday at 7 p.m. Thanks, Cam, for your time.
All the best. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Talk to you soon, mate.
Cheers, Steve. Okay.
Yeah, he is really fantastic. Also, just a few other things that have been happening. We've got the great Razor Robertson from the Crusaders now on board as part of our team. So he is available, when he's not coaching the Crusaders, to actually help you with leadership, to help you with culture. So we're very fortunate to have someone of his caliber. In fact, we've got some really great world-class coaches actually on our books. We've got Razor, and then we've also got Mike Hesson, who's one of the best cricket coaches of the last 15, 20 years in world cricket, and a great guy. This is the thing, is that we kind of have this rule in our company that we don't want to work with plonkers, because life's actually just too short. So we just work with really cool people that we really admire and really respect. And so get hold of us. Get hold of us if you need a bit of motivation. Get hold of us if you need a bit of sales training. Sales training. We've got the great Mike Brunel. Maybe you've got an event coming up where you need some comedy. We've got a hell of a lot of comedians. Well, we haven't got hundreds and hundreds. We've just got the very best comedians. Okay, so we can get a comedian along to lighten things up a little bit. And before you know it, you'll be having your end of year function. What are you going to do for your staff who've had a bloody hard year just like you? You probably haven't got hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend, but maybe you can get a comedian. Maybe you can get a band. Is your conference coming up? Come to us. We will hook you up. Hook you up. Trying to sound young and funky. Thank you very much for listening and watching. It's been a lot of fun. It's good to be back. The thumb is recovering. So the thumb, that happened because trying to feed the dog, and it's just, you don't want to know. Close the show by wishing my good friend and one of my mentors, Brent Impey, all the best. He's fighting that dreadful cancer. Brent is one of the great guys who's worked in media, chairman of New Zealand Rugby Union, and just one of the great guys. One of the great guys. So I know he's going to get through this. He's a top bloke. So BG, if you're watching this, get well soon, brother. All right, everybody, have a fantastic week. You just got to go out there and shake things up a bit, okay? People can also achieve incredible things in tough times. Incredible things. Because what happens is people go, you know what, I'm doing this tough. I don't want to deal with someone who's a plonker who's not looking after me. You're going to have to step up and, look after me here. If you're prepared to do that, if you're prepared to actually step up, then you're going to do really, really well. I don't care if it's COVID, a drought, whatever it is. If you step up, there's an opportunity there for you. So don't keep thinking, the future is so shit. It doesn't need to be. You can actually just own it. Okay, have a great week. All the best. We'll try and jack up some other interviews shortly. Good to get one under the belt. Great to have my good friend Ken Bagrie. Man, he's a good guy. He is such a top bloke. Turning out to be a really good friend too. So get him along. Get him along. All right, have a great week. Bye-bye.